guys, and welcome back to another video, and today we are looking at a scenario where Russia collapses in 2023. So with the Ukraine war going on, what's a better time to talk about what would happen if Russia didn't exist? So here we have Russia. They do still exist, but they are a smaller, much less powerful nation right around here. I pretty much just divided their land. I didn't look at much stuff. My main goal was just weaken Russia, weaken Russia. I've done what if the USA and China were never superpowers, but this is a bit different because here I'm not taking into account very much historical things. I'm just stripping Russia of any lands that they had. They are now still one of the largest countries, but not even, well, I'm guessing at least, not in number one. Their size has been cut in two, and then more tiny slices of land have been taken off of that. China would most likely spread their influence, so let's go ahead and begin with that. Yeah, Russia is weakened. Let's not even talk about them. Let's talk about China. This is now China proper. They then set up regions of influence in the Siberian realm and in Mongolia. They then spread their influence down to Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. They're just trying to set up an anti-American sphere, whilst the American sphere has also expanded as it already controlled a just massive part of Europe. And with Sweden already in NATO, with Finland already in NATO and Sweden only being blocked by a couple countries, we're going to assume that both of them join the American sphere here. As for Kaliningrad, I just gave it independence, but it probably won't last much longer. Ukraine joins now that they're not at war. And the American sphere really just shows here. As this isn't just NATO, this also includes some allies that they have over here in Japan and South Korea. Over here, we're gonna assume, I actually just spun a wheel to decide what country would take control of this. Azerbaijan, Armenia, or Georgia, and Azerbaijan won. So this is now just incredibly large Azerbaijan. It might just be renamed to the Caucasus Mountain country or something like that. As for the rest of the American sphere, of course, Israel. And they have an extensive sphere of influence far greater than China's. And China is looking to change that. With their main ally gone, they now need to get their own friends. North Korea joins in along with Pakistan. Central Asia now looks to China for guidance, with Russia completely gone, as does Iran. Iraq and Yemen join in. And now both sides are starting to look at Africa. Currently they are decently evenly matched. I would put the blue team a bit ahead just because of their massive economy, but the yellow team isn't too weak, and Russia's definitely going to be a deciding factor here. So is India. In fact, India, they have most likely at least already passed China in population. Obviously, there hasn't been a census there in many years, but honestly, I think I agree with that. I think India has surpassed China by this point. If not, then they're very close, and I don't think they'll ever fall behind China again. From there starts the scramble for Africa 2.0, where you're not trying to annex countries, just try and get them under your sphere. The Americans get to Egypt, get to Tunisia, Morocco, whilst the Chinese start to spread their influence into Somalia and Eritrea. This is just the Chinese coming in, telling everybody, hey, I'll give you $1 bajillion if you join me. And Somalia and Eritrea, who want the money, join. Does China even want Somalia on their side? Probably not, but China's going to continue to expand their influence down the East African coast, and that includes Mozambique. With that, the United States, next they decide to go after South Africa, and they are really just both sides are starting to push into Africa, while the US is now once again focusing on America. Venezuela and Cuba both join with China for protection, as anyone who was allied with Russia is now switching over to China, including Belarus and Serbia. And this is really just turning into another massive Cold War. I'm going to color this out because I don't just want to explain how the Cold War goes for this entire video, but that is the main thing that's happening here. A fight between China and the United States. China, in real life, is already nearing the US in influence. With these new lands, it would only get more powerful. With that, let's see what happens to Russia. Well, Russia is heavily weakened here, but they still control Moscow. I let them keep St. Petersburg. But St. Petersburg is like their only good port left. This small access to the Baltic Sea that could easily be cut off by the Baltics and Finland, or the Danish, or Sweden and Germany, or Sweden and Poland. It's not very secure, and their only other option is up here in the Arctic Sea, which is practically unusable. So they're struggling, to say the least. They do not know what to do, as their naval dominance has gone from decent to minuscule at best. The United States, as I said, is going to take advantage of this and kind of separate some countries and do some other parts. They offer Kaliningrad a place in the faction when they refuse their split between Poland and Lithuania. As they do not care who lives there, they decide that either it's aligned with them or gone. From there, they basically just tell the Balkans to join them and to get some more power in the region. They form up the North Balkan Confederation. Is this against their will? Semi-yes, semi-no. Their other option was leave the US and probably get destroyed, but that may change in the future. As for Northern Africa, well, they're starting to bribe countries, of course with money, but also with land. Morocco, well, now that the US is backing them with the Western Sahara, Mauritania backs China. Can't really put the Sudan in a faction, because, well, we don't even know who's in charge anymore. But what we do know is, well, let's go ahead and look at the Americas. Cuba is incredibly isolated. They have joined the Chinese sphere, but there's not an official alliance yet. So America is about to make this island a whole lot more American. With this, China objects fully, and in return, China basically says to, I don't know, let's pick a country around here. Thailand. They go up to Thailand and they say, join me or die. And Thailand says, let me think about it. And then China stages a revolution in the country with a lot of funding that wins. And now Thailand is firmly a Chinese ally. The US says, hey, you can't do that. And China tells them that they can't just annex Cuba. And China decides that enough is enough and they need their own alliance. So they form basically just an Asian Defense Committee between all of these countries. Just a whole lot of Asian countries, including all of Central Asia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, a lot of Southeast Asia, Iran, and a good amount of the Middle East. From there, they basically just turn it into the Anti-American League and invite their African allies, along with Venezuela and Belarus and Serbia. Belarus is incredibly cut off, but Russia, who wants revenge, now joins the Chinese sphere. And this is really turning into another world war with another Cold War with China versus the US. Except China's influence is far, far greater. Well, it's far greater than what the USSR had in the first Cold War. What are the Americans going to do about this? Well, they're going to do one of America's favorite things, and that is say that you're helping countries, you're liberating them, when you're really just getting them on your side. With China expanding, the US decides that the only thing they can do is expand as well. They first gobble up all these countries and force them into their alliance. They then begin to push into North Africa. They make the North African alliance between Tunisia, Morocco, and Morocco that teams up with the US to beat the Algerians, who were getting more and more pro-Chinese. The Chinese once again tell them, hey, that's not cool, and the Americans tell them, you didn't even have any real presence in that country, why do you care? And the Chinese definitely don't tell them that they have a massive network of spies that were planning on joining Algeria and China. But there's not really much they can do, as Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco alone would most likely just stall out a war against Algeria, but with a lot of American aid, maybe even full American involvement with the declaration of war in Algeria, there's really not that much the country can do. From there, they tell some of these other countries, hey, look at us, we're strong, you should join us. And both Mali and Niger agree after the US gives them billions upon billions of dollars to do so. With that, they begin a small push into random desert, which the Algerians basically just say that they're killing themselves. But, well, these two don't really care. They're sending like 2 soldiers who are just starving out there, and they don't care. With that, Morocco and Tunisia finish up the northern campaign, and Algeria is now just desert. Desert can't fight, so Algeria surrenders. With that, Morocco, Tunisia, Mali, and Niger are going to split the country and form up a fairly powerful ring of allies in North Africa for the Americans. Sadly for them, Libya once again, sides with China, and that means they can't connect up with Egypt, but with them controlling a majority of the Mediterranean, it really should not be a problem. That they split up Algeria between the victors. Mali gets a bunch of random desert. Niger gets a bunch of random desert. Tunisia gets a decent amount of land, including some desert and some actually valuable lands. And Morocco also gets a bit of desert and some actually valuable lands. So Algeria's definitely been weakened from this. They've also been given a new, fully democratic, fully American-aligned government. And now, Algeria is just American puppet and American allies surround it. China, once again, not the happiest about this. And with Russia on their side now, or at least the weakened version of Russia that we see here, they're not too worried about the US, They've got themselves a lot of allies, as does the US, and neither side is really going to invade the other due to something called nuclear bombs. If one side did invade the other, then, it would not end well. The universe would most likely explode, and any hope of human life would be obliterated. But let's go ahead and ignore that and continue with the scenario. With, the main parts of Russia gone, the Caucasus Mountains join with the United States for protection, and so does a lot of the Middle East. We now see a kind of war breaking out, a war supported by both sides. That is, of course, where it's going to start over here in Syria, with Turkey sending in some definitely not Turkish-aligned rebels that happen to be all across their border and being supplied by Turkish ships, and definitely not the Turkish flag on all of their military equipment, of course not. Syria takes this as a declaration of war. Syria's in a pact with Iran, who's in a pact with China. So now these pro-Turkish rebels are at war with one of the world's 2 great superpowers. Yeah, that's not going to end very well for you. From there, China and Iran just decide, alright, these guys do not deserve a place in this universe. Iraq joins in, as does Pakistan, just to kind of link them together a bit better. And now Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan also join in. They don't really have to, but it helps them get favor with China, which is going to be useful in the long run. From there, the pro-Turkish rebels quickly advance as if the entire Turkish military was helping them, but of course that could never happen, right, Turkey? Of course not. Well, they cut off Syria and begin to push into Iraq, but sadly for them, Iranian troops are now starting to arrive, and Turkey is starting to realize that maybe they can't win this. From there, Iran is going to be like, definitely not Turkish soldiers in our lands. That's a declaration of war. So now Turkey and Iran are at war. But you see, Turkey's in this thing called NATO, which NATO has now expanded into the entire world. So now the entire world is involved. We see Turkey being the, of course, instigator of the war, and both sides calling in their entire factions, aka the biggest world in mankind's history. I'm not going to explain the entire thing because I don't have 10 years, but I will start the war and basically just tell you how it's going to end without actually finishing it, because once again, don't have 10,000 years to make one video. Serbia isn't actually in their faction, but I'll color them out in a second. And the same thing with Switzerland, that's just easier. With that, US and their allies also finish borders. Once again, Finland, please get these borders in real life. I always say, if World War III one day starts, I'm probably going to die to nuclear weapons. But if I do, I hope Finland wins and I hope they get that land. Wish they would have gotten it sooner before those things existed, but no, that's the only good thing I can see coming of it. if anything at all. With that, oh god, the entire world is now at war with each other, with almost every single country having to pick one of the two major sides. Do you want to be with the USA in the West, or with China and the East? Which is pretty much just China, but with some notable allies such as Pakistan, Iran, and North Korea. From there, the USA finishes its call-up of all of its allies, with Canada joining in, and in the end, the United States of America itself joins into the war. Once again, this would most likely lead to just complete Armageddon unfolding, with the United States and China launching all of their missiles, which at this point China has made a whole lot more, not caring about any old treaties or anything like that. And there is a massive world war. Of course there's. Serbia, Belarus, and Russia join the blue team to counteract American expansion, and with Russia hoping to regain some of the lost lands. From there, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan join, Mongolia and Afghanistan both join, and the Siberian Republic also joins, causing, at least I'm guessing this is already the largest war in mankind's history, maybe World War II still slightly overshadowing this due to European colonies, but trust me, it's only going to get bigger. With India, who is now, as I said, the most populous country in the world, deciding that Russia, Pakistan on a team, China and Pakistan on a team, they're two worst enemies, why not join in and try and at least stop them or slow them down? With that, China calls in all of its Southeast Asian allies to counteract India, but Vietnam decides that China's been doing enough on its border, and Malaysia, well, yeah, no, you're just going to be neutral for now. Once again, I'm just going to show you the sides, because I do not have time to make another world war that is completely different. Might just explain some of the basics of it. From there, we can see most of the Middle East joining in on the American side, except for Yemen, or at least of what's left. No, that's not the American side. Red is the American side, which normally red is the Russian side, but guess not this time. This time the Americans had to start the war, and that just causes to even more diplomatic controversy between who is the true bad guy of this war. If China hadn't joined in against the pro-Turkish rebels, then this war would have most likely never happened. But if the United States hadn't backed Turkey in the first place in a war that most countries saw as unjust, then perhaps China wouldn't have had to join in, and this war once again wouldn't have had to start. So now, with Turkey already having pushed into Syria and Iraq, let's continue the war. A few things are going to happen, especially in the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia now helping out. Serbia's quickly knocked out, and Belarus is as well, as all of the red team starts to push into a heavily weakened Russia. From there, more allies are called in, mainly Africa, with the Americans calling in Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Mali, and Niger. The Chinese decide, hey, if you can call in all of your countries in Africa, so can I. So they call in all of their allies. They also call in Venezuela just to act as a bit of a distraction for the Americans. So now this is what we have. This is World War III. But the Chinese aren't done. They call in Libya and Sudan, who has now chosen to side with the Chinese. Whilst the Americans, Nigeria stays neutral for now. I might actually add them to the Chinese side eventually. Colombia joins the American side, as does Chile. As Chile, well, they've been really hugging up to the US. Don't ask me why in this world they decided to do that, but they are now just really good friends with the Americans. Simply because the Chilean government decided to start supporting absolutely anything and everything that the Americans said. Now we have a world war. So yeah, China versus the US, who's going to come out on top? Once again, everyone is just going to get obliterated. But let's go ahead and assume that conventional war is used. First of all, the red team pushes into Mauritania. Actually, no, they push into a random desert in Mauritania, so nobody actually cares. Then Western Sahara fully rebels, and now the Moroccans actually have something useful to go for. Meanwhile, the Tunisians and Algerians are pushing into northern Libya together with Egypt. And down in Sudan, the Egyptians are pushing down. Mozambique seems pretty safe, but South Africa might just want some of that. Now with South Africa involved, Mozambique is getting destroyed, as is Sudan. Yemen's already gone. And a war that looked pretty even is looking pretty favorable for the Americans. Or is it not over here in Asia, where I forgot to color in a bunch of allies? North Korea on the blue team, and South Korea and Japan on the red team, which Japan did get Sakhalin, and I'm pretty sure it's the Kuril Islands from Russia when they collapsed, except for a few, just like 3 up here in the north, that went to the Greater Siberian Realm. Over here in Asia, it is not looking good for the Americans. The Vietnamese employ some guerrilla tactics used during the Vietnam War, and kill a stupid amount of Chinese divisions, but in the end, China is able to suppress them at least enough to control the territory. They also push into a fairly disconnected part of India, despite having some issues with mountains, and them and Pakistan begin to push into Kashmir and into India. India is quite the powerful country, so I doubt China will be able to capitulate them, but they are definitely going to try. From there, they begin to push up into the Caucasus region, capturing Baku, which may be the capital in this scenario. Maybe. I could not tell you for certain, as it is a new country. Meanwhile, though, the red team is seeing a great amount of success pushing into Kazakhstan, who is, even with all of this new land, not even close to being a powerful country. With that, Russia also begins to fall back, completely abandoning Belarus in favor of protecting St. Petersburg. Last answer. And Libya's just gone. So they surrender, and now Sudan's situation is even worse with Eritrea gone. As for Mauritania, well, they tried to hide down in those random deserts, but sadly for them, it's a desert. So everyone just starves, everyone dies. And now the world looks like this. As for Venezuela, yeah, they're just gone. They're just gone. And it is a fairly even stalemate, I want to say. Although the red team does seem like it is winning. As the blue team, as I said, has China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, and maybe by what some people say, North Korea or Thailand. It is still not the most powerful of alliance with China carrying. Whereas on the red team, you have the most powerful actually, China may have overtaken the US for now, but we're going to assume that the United States is still number 1. So you have the US, you have a lot of Western Europe, France, Germany, UK, Italy, Poland, all very powerful countries. You have this Caucasus Mountain country, fairly powerful, Turkey, Ukraine, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Egypt, a very powerful country as well. And you have India, who would most likely be the 3rd most powerful and influential country in this world. You also have Japan and South Korea, who have some of the most powerful militaries and economies. So when you say it like that, it's looking a whole lot more one-sided. If we assume that Germany, France, Italy, and the UK can deal with Russia, all the Balkans and Central Asia will cancel out. Turkey and Saudi Arabia can deal with Iran. India can deal with Pakistan and Southeast Asia. Japan and South Korea can deal with all this mess. Then now all we have left is China. And on the US side, we have the United States, Canada, Colombia, Chile. We have a lot of Africa and quite a few states such as Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Spain, and Portugal, and the Nordics left to help them. Yeah, that just puts it into perspective a lot better if you ask me, but take it how you will. Also, if you hear something in the background, not very much I can do about that. Apparently somebody sees this as the perfect time to mow their lawn, so let's wrap this up with a stalemate. I doubt anyone would win this war, and with the sound getting louder, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I may post some borders on the community tab, but that's only if this video does well. If not, then this is all you have. In the end, stalemate. China might take some lands out of India, but those would most likely rebel. And Africa is turning more and more American. Once again, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Bye. Bye.